With the month of November set as the start of a gradual shift to a new normal in life here in Korea, interest is also growing with regard to overseas travel. And accordingly, for more on the prospects for the tourism industry, I have Professor Bae So-young from Kyung University. It's good to see you again, Professor Bae.
Thank you very much for having me again.
And also joining the session virtually is Professor Jerry Argusa at the University of Hawaii. It's a pleasure to have you with us, Professor Argusa.
Aloha, thank you for having me.
Right. Professor Bae, we'll start here in the studio then. Let's begin with some of the travel bubbles that Korea has signed with a few of its international counterparts.
So yes, as more people has got vaccinated, many countries, they actually declare to live with COVID-19 instead of actually waiting until these corona things are over and just reopen their border. And people have very high expectation about it. And currently, Korea has signed a travel bubble with two other countries, Saipan and Singapore. So first of all, over the last month, more than 4,000 people has actually purchased the travel package to Saipan. And since Saipan government offers lots of benefits to the potential tourists, including like some travel vouchers, so people even are very much motivated to travel there to Saipan. In the case of Singapore, we are able to actually travel with no self-isolate from the next month, about mid-November, and it's very meaningful in that this is the very first travel bubble between the countries that have the two major aviation hubs in Asia. So it also allows the travel of individual tourists as well as package tourists, and that is very meaningful. And in fact, many other countries also have opened up their borders to fully vaccinated tourists, including like United States and Canada and some of the countries in South American regions like Mexico, Colombia, Spain, Belgium, European countries, and some other popular holiday destinations. Of course, we have to actually do the self-isolate once we return to Korea for like 2 weeks.
Right, but then when we're there in Saipan or in Singapore, it's a quarantine-free travel for those who are fully vaccinated.
Absolutely.
Do we have the option of handing in a negative PCR test if we're not vaccinated?
Yes, we have to actually hand over those negative PCR results.
As well, I see. All right, Professor Argusa, I hear Hawaii is looking to welcome back travelers starting November 1st. Now, please tell us a bit more about this latest development, including the current COVID-19 situation there in Hawaii.
Well, thank you again for having us today. One of the challenges is, first of all, the President of the United States did just recently announce that we are going to open up. And here in Hawaii, the governor yesterday announced that he too is welcoming back non-essential travel. So that's a great thing. One of the things is that you have to have a COVID, first you have to have a vaccine card as well as a COVID negative test within the last 72 hours when you arrive to not be quarantined. So these are good things. We now are looking at hopefully get more international tourists. One of the things about Hawaii is that we were locked down for part of the year. And with that, tourism actually ceased. And because tourism is our #1 industry and our #1 employer, we went from the lowest unemployment in the United States to the highest. But now we're back open, and we're looking forward to welcoming both tourists from the U.S. mainland as well as international.
Right. Professor Argusa, I believe the governor, David Ige, is opening up borders there to travel international travelers because COVID-19 cases in the state has dropped. Is that the case?
Yes. Well, we had a surge about 8 weeks ago. And with that, he had to take very drastic measures. He actually went on TV and asked people not to travel. But prior to that, May, June, July, we had an excellent number of tourists coming, and we had a record. In July 2021, we had a record on some of the hotels with both average daily rate, revenue, as well as occupancy levels. So we really did very well. The wave came, we had a lot of tourists, and then we had a downfall. We had to shut down because the COVID cases rose very, very quickly. One of the challenges here in Hawaii is we're just a small group of islands, and we have very small hospitals. And what happens is once the hospitals get filled with COVID patients, there's nowhere else to go. You cannot transfer somebody, say, from one city to the other because there are no other cities to go to. We're 5,000 kilometers away from the next state and from the next country. So because of that, he had to take very drastic measures and just shut everything down. We actually still have some measures still in place. No more than groups of 10 inside together. Restaurants and bars have to close at 10 o'clock in the evening. And this is what was a good strategy because COVID patients stay in the hospital about 20 days. So once you have a patient in there, the challenge is they don't leave. Unlike, here in the United States, someone has a baby, they only stay 2.1 days. But the average COVID patient stays 20 days. So we just don't have the bed space inside. And in the evenings, when we have people that have accidents in the night, especially if there's any type of drinking involved, they're severe accidents and they need to be hospitalized. And there's just no room in the hospitals at that time. So that was one of the strategies on why shutting down the bars and restaurants at 10 p.m. Right. So we've done that. Right. And it's still in effect at this time. And hopefully the restaurants could only be 50% occupancy still at this time.
I see. So Hawaii is taking its precautions then. Professor Pei, Korean Air earlier this week announced plans to resume flights to Hawaii come November 3rd. Now, this resumption follows a halt in flights back in April 2020, I believe. Are we looking at an active resumption of international exchanges now?
Yes, so vaccination rates have been increased in Korea and also globally. So Korean Air announced that it will resume its international flights from Korea to Hawaii at least 3 times a week from November 3rd. And as you know, Hawaii is one of the very popular travel destinations in Korea, especially among honeymooners. So everybody is very much looking forward to it. And the aviation industry has gone through very, very tough times during this COVID-19 pandemic situation. But recently, as many countries start to open their borders, so many airline companies in Korea actually have resumed their international flights, mainly to nearby countries like Japan or countries in Southeast Asia, and also some of the major holiday destinations. And they have been working very hard on aircraft maintenance because they haven't been operating the aircraft for so long, so to ensure the safety things. But while it is very encouraging news, however, there are some of the relevant issues to deal with because the jet fuel price surge, that's serious, and also some fluctuating exchange rate as well. And also since people are still very much anxious about overseas travel due to those safety issues. So the airlines company, they will need to closely monitor the current situations as well as some external factors to ensure the safety of the passengers.
Right. And even against that backdrop, Professor Agru said the global tourism industry as a whole continues to bear the brunt of pandemic-related restrictions. How has this reality affected Hawaii?
Well, we are a microcosm to the travel industry, right? Because it is our number one industry. We are so dependent on tourism. And as I said earlier, we went from the lowest unemployment in the United States to the highest unemployment in 1 month. We have about 1,300,000 folks live in the whole state, and we lost 200,000 jobs in 1 month. And with that, all of a sudden, with the pandemic, people realized just how important tourism is to the economy of the state. And as now that tourism is now opening up again, and we're opening little by little, we're still not back to where we were. We did hit 900,000 tourists for the month of July, but it's now, we're still missing that international element. Most of those 99% of those tourists that came in June and July are from the U.S. mainland, and they're a different type of tourist. They were usually a lot of first-timers, and unlike the tourists that come from Asia, specifically the Japanese is our number one international market, but also, as the professor said, the honeymoon market from Korea is very, very, very important for us. And when folks are on their honeymoon, they really go out and enjoy themselves. They have a more exotic travel. They have more upscale dinners. It's a honeymoon, and they spend the most money, and that's what you want as a tourist destination. And hopefully, they have an enjoyable vacation so that they'll come back for their anniversaries, etc. Right. And that's where we hope to set that tone.
Professor Agrusa, I understand, though, that you have a few concerns regarding the resumption of tourism following months of restrictions. Do you care to elaborate?
Well, one of the concerns we have to worry about is, are we gearing up? Are we ready? Now, the hotels seem to have been ready when we had the wave, but the restaurants weren't able to handle it because of the 50% capacity. We had very long lines, both for tourists as well as for the residents that wanted to eat out. And one of the biggest challenges that we had both in June and July is the shortage of rent-a-cars. And what happened is, if I don't know, I sent a thing over. If we looked in, it hit international news, and it actually was in a Korean newspaper. Due to the artificial intelligence that they use at the rent-a-car places, when the rent-a-cars became so short and supply and demand, we actually had rent-a-cars renting for $1,000 a day. A convertible was renting for $1,000 a day. Now, I don't know if anybody paid that much money, but the price points just kept going up and up because of the shortage of rent-a-cars. And there's a number of reasons for that. First of all, that we didn't know how long the lockdown was going to happen. So the rent-a-cars here, because space is so limited, the car rental places only have enough space on their lot for 30% of the cars, and they consider 70% to be out at all times. And when you had nobody coming, there was no place to put the cars. And at our Aloha Stadium we had here, there were 4,000 rent-a-cars parked there. And even if it was only $10 a day, that's $40,000 a day to just hold cars in an island in the middle of the ocean, surrounded by salt water and salt air, which is very, very bad for cars to be just sitting around. So what they did was the rent-a-car companies sold their fleets. They got rid of their cars. And then when tourism started to pick up again, there are not the availability to buy the cars. And one of the biggest reasons is because of the shortages of chips. Now with supply chain issues, as well as with the chip shortages. If anybody's trying to buy a new phone, whether it's a smartphone, Samsung, iPhone, there's huge backlogs because of the computer chips. And the same with the cars, the motor vehicles. So the motor vehicle companies, the car dealerships, don't have to sell at a discount to these rent-a-car places. So there's still a shortage of rent-a-cars. And one of the things that took off is Turo, where residents rent their car, similar to Airbnb, where people rent out their house, they rent out their car.
So that is a viable option then, having residents to rent their cars.
Yeah, we did, and it's been very, very profitable. I have a former student that lives on Maui, and she was making so much money. She said to me, Dr. Agrusa, I'm going to quit my job and just get another car. And I was like, no, don't do that. This is only temporary, young lady. You stick with, she was working for a very nice hotel and she had a good job, but she was looking at it from the profitability. And, what happened is when we had the downturn, the local residents were able to go out to the beach, et cetera. And now, we have everybody working again.
Right.
And I mean, even if you're working, it's still a very beautiful place.
Right, it is. I have to agree. Professor Bae, moving beyond Hawaii then, what can you tell us about the impact of COVID-19 on the tourism industry by country?
You mean the tourism change?
Sure.
I mean the
Yes.
tourism trend, what's going on in this era. So, well, over the last 2 years, I think we have learned a lot to how, in terms of how to live with COVID-19 situation and pretty much adapt to the new normal in our daily life. So I think there wouldn't be any dramatic change in the upcoming year, but rather than that, we will just continue to live our new normal way of life. And during the pandemic, it seems that everybody feels that travel is so important in our life. So everybody realized the true value of the travel. And as more and more borders are open with the increased vaccination rate, obviously overseas travel will be expanded and increased. But in the meantime, I think the travel trend of the domestic tourism or the craze of the outdoor activities will also go on. And people will still like to spend a lot about content. I mean, they like to consume the online content to enjoy things from the online setting. And their increased need of the safety will make also people pursue more individualized, personalized travel setting, and also considering the inherent uncertainty in traveling in this era. I think people will try to focus on the quality of their time spent rather than actual quantity, how much they see, regardless of the country. And also what's truly important for them will be the memorable experience during their travel. So it could be offered either online and offline. So from the service providers' perspectives, I think it will be very important to ensure the memorable experience for all the tourists.
Right. Professor Aguirre, some industry findings show that a growing number of potential travelers are looking to visit Korea once COVID-19 is under global control. Now, as a scholar in the related field, looking into Korea from the outside, what do you believe is behind this finding?
Well, there's a number of reasons, I think. And one of the biggest is that when people were cooped up, they watched Netflix. And I think that a lot had to do with the K-dramas and the number of different movies that came out during this time, and especially that were directed by, Korean directors. And, I happen to be did some research about 15 years ago, starting looking at K-dramas and the movement of tourists from Japan to Korea. But I think this time it's a different generation that has been watching the K-dramas as well as Squid, and again with the music, Blackpink, BTS, all these things came into play. I think that now I actually surveyed my class this afternoon, the graduating seniors, and almost half of them said they're very much interested in visiting Korea, both for the food as well as the culture.
Right. Professor Aguirre, have you seen Squid Game?
I have seen it, but I didn't see the whole thing.
Okay,
I saw some of it. I
see.
actually watched part of it because of this interview.
I see. All right. Professor Bae, keeping in mind what Professor Aguirre has just said, do you believe that the rave global reviews of Korea's cultural contents will serve to further boost perhaps tourism here in the country?
Absolutely. So the Netflix original drama Squid Game actually has shown a global sensation in the world, and it's just amazing. And actually the green outfit from those Squid Game, that's become a #1 popular Halloween costume in this year. And recently, the collaborative new song from the BTS and Coldplay also has ranked at the first place in the Billboard chart. And I think K-culture has truly fascinated to all over the world. And in this pandemic, when traveling crossing borders are largely restricted, such powerful content is very important because they can actually maximize the awareness of the particular country and also boost up the positive image of Korea as well. And ultimately, it will increase the level of intention to travel to that country after this pandemic things are over or eased. So I think we have to be fully ready to welcome more inbound tourists in this living with COVID era. And tourism is not just about sightseeing anymore. It's all about experience. So we will have to prepare very creative, authentic, and experience-based tourism contents, especially based on this K-culture wave and Hallyu. And also using the high technology such as virtual spaces or metaverse will also be a great setting to offer very unique experience in this era.
Right. And Professor Aguirre, along with the excitement over overseas travel, there is much concern over possible resurgences. What are your thoughts on this reality?
Well, I think we just found out 2 or 3 days ago that in London, they found out another variant that they're very concerned about. And I think we have to be cognitive of these types of changes. Don't forget, only 20% of the earth has been vaccinated. That means there's still 80% that still needs to be vaccinated. And until the majority of people are vaccinated, this isn't a virus that you get through drinking or touching. It's by air, and we all have to breathe. So we need to hopefully get more and more folks vaccinated. I know that your Korea has been very, very diligent, and the vaccination rates are rapidly rising. In the United States, we've had some issues. We have some people that are against the vaccine. and there's still not enough folks that are vaccinated that should be. And I think that there's a number of reasons. Some people are against it, but I think some people just haven't taken the availability that's out there for that. Just to go back a quick thing from a former question, I think that another thing that's going to help bring tourists to Korea is that the Parasite movie won the Academy Award. And this is not the Academy Award for international film. This is the Academy Award for all film. And I think that that really opened up the door for people that wanted to come and see how, they want to see the locations and they want to see about Korean film. And I think that that's really, really going to bring folks around because, the movies is just is a window into how people learn about different cultures.
And here in Hawaii,
if we didn't have some of the TV shows, recently we had the Hawaii Five-0 series come back, and that really increased tourists to coming here.
Right. All right, Professor Agurusa, thank you very much for your kind words and your time today. Professor Pei here in the studio, thank you for your thoughts as well.
Thank you.